Is Aputure 400x the best filmmaking light? Well, let's find out. This review is going to be very much based on my anecdotal experience using these lights in real world productions. But if you're just looking for heavy data, go watch Andrew Locke's video on Gaffer and Gear channel. That's where all the data is. I think this is where you come in to see if these will make you enough money. Hi guys, I'm Bindra, the owner of Bindra Productions here in Orlando, Florida. We do a lot of corporate and commercial filmmaking, sometimes documentary, and I wanted to give you a review from someone who has been using this light for a few weeks now, and I paid my own money, nobody's sending these lights to me, and just to show you where this light stands up, is it really that good that it's made out to be? So when this light was initially announced, just like everyone, I was extremely surprised by the price point. So coming in a little under $1,100 is actually very low. So this is part of their new Storm lineup, which is not part of the older Light Storm line. So essentially this is Aputure's version of RGB ACL lights. They call it Blare. The unique thing in this light is the I, which stands for an indigo chip, which is like a near UV chip, which gives you that natural fluorescence that a lot of clothing and other items in our world have, which normal lights can't replicate. So in my opinion, these lights come the closest that we have to tungsten light, and for me, almost eliminate buying any kind of hot lights for what we do, because we don't need anything more than the big boy over here, the 1200X. So essentially I wanted to not only show this light, but also compare it to the rest. So this is the Aputure's current lineup. So the Storm series starts with the 80C, then we can jump up to the trusty 300D Mark II, then the 300X, and the Storm 400X would be somewhere in the middle, and then 600X Pro, the 600D Pro, and the 1200X Pro. The only light I'm missing in the lineup here is the 1000C from Aputure, which would be like the big boy version of the 80C. So based on what Aputure initially said, it basically meant that this light was going to not only replace all the smaller lights, but it was supposed to replace the 600X if you look at the Photometrics initially. And I think this is where the first negative of this light comes in. It's a very common thing that I'm noticing. If you compare the 400 to its siblings, the 300s, if you compare the 80C, to any other relevant light, or even the 1200X to the 1200D, what Aputure is doing is they're basically narrowing the beam angle. So in the Photometrics, it looks like the light is a lot brighter than it actually is, because in most real world scenarios, you're not just using a bare cob. I mean, some situations we do, but it's very rare. Normally you're throwing something on it. There is an inherent advantage to lowering the beam angle, but that is that once you use something like a Fresnel, it does make the beam, I guess, be more efficient. And so you are getting more output. So this tricking of the Photometrics is kind of not new. So in the past, when Aputure initially started, they had a reflector that was smooth. I think I had 120D Mark IIs that had it. And the advantage was the light was very even. So a reflector was actually usable. But I think starting with the 300D Mark II, they started sending these hyper reflectors out. And it did make the light beam brighter, but the way it did that by creating a hot spot in the middle. So when you use a meter like this or a light meter, like I'm having this color meter like the C800, it would make the light appear brighter in the Photometrics, because you'd be measuring in the middle of the light beam, which would be where the light is concentrated, but it wasn't even. So for me, every light that had this reflector, I just don't use it. It's one of those things that chucks out or just goes out when somebody's renting one of these lights. I prefer not to use it. The other thing is, I think the Fresnel is a better replacement for reflector. So all these lights, you have to buy a Fresnel, but that is the disadvantage, I think, of modern fixtures. It's not like you can use the same Fresnel again. So as you notice, you have the 300 series, different Fresnel. You want a 400, they have a completely different, I think, CF7 Fresnel for this. The C80 has its own Fresnel. The 600 series have the F10 Fresnel. The 1200X is a different Fresnel. So essentially, the cost of light is actually much higher, because in my opinion, when you're buying something like this, the Fresnel is not an optional accessory, because the reflector is kind of useless to me, unless very, very rare circumstances where the hotspot may be a good thing. But normally we're running the Fresnel, and as you add that to the cost, now the light becomes higher, and then now you need one for every light. Now I want to talk a little bit about the advantage of Aputure, right? One of the best things that I did for my company was when this Aputure was a very, very small company. We used to use these hot lights, and we used to have gloves on, and I'm a DP, so I didn't want to carry all that extra stuff around. And back 7 to I think 8 years ago, when they came out with the 120D Mark II, I made this commitment that this company was gonna kind of change the game, and that helped me a lot because of using their Sidus ecosystem. Buying Aputure lights actually helped a lot, and they kind of slowly just became the industry standard, and that helped me get a lot of projects with agencies that I wouldn't have otherwise. So that bet kind of paid off for me. Obviously, I don't care what brand of lights you buy, but me buying and staying in that Sidus ecosystem with that Bluetooth control helped a lot. Now, obviously, I moved on from that, but I still use their DMX system, which is the Sidus one that Aputure has created, and it makes it amazing, which is coming out to why I think this light is an incredible upgrade to these lights. First of all, the weather resistance. We're in Florida. It rains all the time. So when a weather event happens, if you're gonna grab our cameras and audio and other things, lights are usually the last thing you're grabbing. And these lights, they couldn't go out. They were not weather resistant. Versus having that weather resistance on these lights is a really amazing factor. So now we don't have to rush to grab the lights. We can go grab other things when a weather event happens. Or sometimes in a light drizzle, I'd even leave it out. The thing I'm not a fan of what Aputure does, if you notice underneath, I don't know if I have a B-roll of that, but they put a little sticker that says, for dry locations only. I think that's a way for them to legally protect themselves. But I'm not a fan of business practice where you're selling a light as weather resistant or, can be used in weather, but then you're literally putting stickers everywhere that says you cannot put it in wet weather. So again, I think if something happens, they just don't want any liability. But that's not good for me. I don't like when I buy a product that I can put out in the rain that says do not put out in the rain. I hope that makes sense. But that feature is really important to me. Another thing I noticed is this power cable is just it's not smooth. Like, see, it's hard to show on camera, but this is on all 3 of my lights. This isn't just one light. I found that all the previous Aputure lights, when we connect the power cable, you get an audible click, so it's installed. Versus on these lights, it just feels like dampened is the right way to explain it. But the point is, it does not click, and I'm not a fan of it. And I've noticed this is on all 3 of my units. You have to just turn it really hard. A lot of times you think it didn't even go in fully. So again, something very minor, but something I noticed. The other thing is, again, like I talked about just a minute ago, the wireless CRMX and DMX features that are built in is so much better. Once you start to have more than a few fixtures, Bluetooth is not the way. Your cues are not to time. And let me know if you want a dedicated video. I'm happy to do a dedicated video on CRMX and wireless control of these lights. But with Sidus Pro and being able to use something like Sidus One, and then the ability to not have to run some dongles to be able to do DMX and CRMX is such a huge relief on this light. And one of the small things, but very important, all the things on top. So all the attachment points, whether you're using wired DMX, or your output power or your AC in, everything's on top. I think that's such a good quality of life improvement. You would be amazed how many times we were using these 300X and 300Ds. I've had people literally on the ground, like going upside down trying to find the AC adapter, the AC cable going in. It was just not good. So I'm glad that's changed. I would actually really like that for any light going forward. The other thing is kind of like a pro and a con at the same time. They labeled these connectors, if you notice, red and red up here. Can you see it, Mario? But the issue I have is the cable's red. So this could have actually been really, really useful had they done one like a different color, I don't know, yellow or blue, and one red, because then it would have been very easy. Because now I can't tell. I tried once we initially got the light. I was like, oh, that's great, color-coded cable. But the first person was like, hey, attach red to red. They got confused because this is red. So where does the red go? Right? Again, something minor, but I think in the future it'd be really cool if this was red and this was, instead of red, a different color, and because then it would be very easy. Hey, attach blue to blue and red to red. For somebody using the light the first time, I think that would be an incredible thing. The other thing is really cool is if you notice, this light is just a baby version of this light. And this is one of my favorite lights. The amount of output we get, the quality of light, the Fresnel is so incredible. Anytime I'm building a big frame like an 8 by 12 by, this is my favorite fixture to light things with. And to be honest, this is probably the brightest thing I want to own, because anything, if you need anything bigger than that, you know, I'm not handling that. We cannot power something bigger than that from a regular household outlet. So this light has been an incredible fixture for us, and now to be able to have essentially a baby version of it. Because my favorite thing is, in today's time, I want every light to have some kind of color functionality. It has to be bicolor at bare minimum, but having that extended CCT range to be able to go, you know, something like 2700, I think this can do, as high as I think this can even go to like 10,000 Kelvin, which is so nice to be able to make it warm, make it cool, but then that green magenta shift, because nature of LEDs, at some point, you know, they're going to turn green. And whenever that happens, being able to kind of counteract that, not having to carry any gels to change either color temperature or add, you know, fixed green magenta shift, is kind of incredible. Plus the newest thing that they've added, which is the limited color ability. So again, these don't have the cyan and green chip, which would be like in the ADC, the CG. So they call it Blair CG. That would be, again, RGB ACLI, I believe, would be that light. And then this is missing your C and G. But in my experience, I've found most of the time when we need color, this is more than enough. And it's so incredible to just be able to go on my iPad console and be able to change the color or change the temperature or whatever. So these lights are kind of incredible. I do think they will, I'm not, you know, I don't have any links to Aputure, but I do see them probably, just like they did with the 1200X, putting another light in that same shell. I do see them making like a 300C maybe, possibly, to resolve those issues for people who do want those saturated colors, if you're making, you know, K-pop videos or whatever. But K-pop, is that the word?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
K-pop.
All right, if you're making K-pop videos. So in summary, this is an incredible light. I think the ability to change not only your color temperature at a wider range, the ability for it to be able to fix green magenta, the limited color ability, the controller, the ballast, having all the connections up top, the weather resistance. I think this light is definitely priced to sell, because at, I think, $1,060, something like that, I think this is an incredible purchase price for what you're getting. This is extremely bright, and it definitely is an improvement on both these lights, because it's not only brighter than the 300X, it is definitely brighter than the 300E Mark II. And once you add this Fresnel, if you look at the Photometrics, it is definitely brighter. And I think if you have these lights, so for me, I will be selling both my 300Es and the 300X and just switching to 400Xs, because again, I need those wireless DMX features. I need all that extra stuff in the workflow that I do. Efficiency is key. If you've seen any of my videos, we want to move fast. We want to have that higher color quality, and I love the Blair lineup and just how the light comes, the quality of the light. But I don't think, if you're a limited budget, that you have to just go out and spend $1,100, because don't forget, you're going to have to buy the Fresnel to go with it in most situations, because you're either putting a dome on it or some kind of frame in front of it, or the Fresnel, and that is an additional cost. I think these lights are still incredible if you're on a budget. I think a lot of people like me are going to put their lights on sale, and for you to be able to snag something like this for $400 or $500, I think is still a sweet deal. As long as you don't need wireless DMX, Bluetooth is good enough for you. You don't need the weather resistance. The light quality is amazing, and again, other people probably are getting rid of the Fresnels like I would be. So with the Fresnel, I think these lights were great. Just don't use the included reflector dishes. I think for me, this is a good lineup. So going from ADC to 400X, because this lights can go really, really dim. Actually, 0.1% is actually low on these lights, unlike these older lights where you'd go to 1%, but it would still be very bright. The gap is actually not that huge. Now, here's the thing I would advise you against. As soon as I heard this light and I ordered these, I immediately was like, okay, I'm putting my 600X to sell, because Aputure was like, oh, this is brighter than your 600X. Well, the thing is, yes, if you compare their photometrics, you put their Fresnel on it and you compare it to the F10, yes, the 400X is going to be about equal or slightly brighter. But in real world scenario, most of the time, you know, you put a dome on it, this thing is actually still about 30-40% brighter. So for me, I'm so glad I didn't sell this light, because I'm definitely going to be keeping my 600 series, because I still need that extra output. And if you see, the gap between this 400 and the 1200 is huge. So again, I'm not a betting man, but I would assume there's some light coming here. I don't know if they're going to put it 700, 800x, but we really need a light in the Storm series somewhere in between to replace these aging fixtures. At least the thing I like about these fixtures is, sure, they're not Blair, but they do have that weather resistance and the wireless CRMX features, so they can still play in the environments that at least I am filming in. But Aputure for real needs to come out with some kind of light that goes here. So the gap is kind of huge. So I am definitely not selling these lights until this hypothetical 800x, 700x, 750x maybe comes out. So that's my summary. If you have to buy any one light, if you're just doing small corporate shoots, I think a cob light is the way to go, just because you can make this hard light, you can make it soft light. If you go with a panel, it's always a soft light. So cob lights are versatile. There's a reason they kind of have taken over. And if I had to own only one light, I'd buy a cob light. And I think this is a very good starting point. I don't think most filmmakers who are doing smaller stuff need to go out and get this. But if you're all, you know, if you're missing on output, you know if you need this. But I think you're getting essentially the 1200X in a smaller, kind of cuter package for 1/3 of the price. I think this is the way to go. If you're really low on budget, buy these for used. But the biggest negative, I don't know if you've noticed, be careful. All these lights have their Fresnels. Do you notice something? There's no Fresnel here. I ordered 3 Fresnels. When I ordered these lights, Aputure, where are my Fresnels? Why is it taking months? It took them 6 months to send me the Fresnel for the 1200X. I don't know if their lights are so popular, but they can't figure out how to make the stuff. But the biggest issue I have with this brand, I've committed. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on my money buying Aputure lights. But the 2 biggest issues remain with Aputure. So be careful. One is they can't seem to keep up with the demand. Our ADC3 light kit took months to arrive, and I have no idea when I'm getting my Fresnels here. And as I told you, I don't use the reflector. So, and then this light is not the best for domes. On 150, this is definitely not replacing this light. So kinda, I got these lights, but I can't use them in the way I would like to until the Fresnels come in. So Aputure, please send my Fresnels. But also be careful when you invest in Aputure gear, because you don't know once you order when it's coming in. The second thing is Aputure's, I guess, repair thing. When you buy pro products like this is designed for a rental market. You need to have a good repair system in place. The issue I have with repair, last time I needed something with Aputure, it took them 6 months to fix my issue. We currently have an issue ongoing. Sent them the support email 3-4 days ago. I haven't heard back. So you know, support is where Aputure still needs to come up and kind of improve your thing, because imagine you spend $1,100 on this light, a couple hundred on your Fresnel and barn doors, and the next thing you know, it breaks down and now you're out a month or 2. You don't know how long of your light, and that's, in a pro environment, you can't do that. So those are the 2 things I think as a brand overall Aputure needs to fix. But the thing is, in the last 7 years, Aputure's made me a ton of money. Owning these lights have brought me to sets I wouldn't have otherwise. They have brought tools accessible to me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think the biggest improvement we've seen in anything is not cameras and sound, but rather lighting. And something like this now can improve your camera's quality a lot more than actually, believe it or not, upgrading your camera. Because the lighting, I truly believe, is what separates a good video from a bad, because you can make a bad camera look good with a good lighting, but you cannot do the other way around. And I personally am committed, because as you see, I bought 3. I didn't buy 1. I bought 3 of these lights. And I also wanted to compare the case. Do you see it's basically the same dimensions, just a little taller? So, and I do like, for some people, I don't use cases. I put my lights in milk crates, but if you do, this thing is really cool. You could kind of put your modifier here and carry it with your case. I think it's really good. But like I said, I bought 3 of these lights, so I'm kind of committed to the Aputure ecosystem. But Aputure really needs to step up their game. However, I think this is an incredible light. And I do truly believe, as of right now, this is the best filmmaking light. If you could only one light, buy the Storm 400X.